I think is.
See us both?
You can
Yeah.
see us both?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
good.
Can you see this?
Not really, but there you go. Now I can see both of you and.
Tell me when and I'll say something.
Okay, we're here at Bernard Slot Car Museum in Houston, Texas. The largest slot car museum of very rare and collectible slot cars in the world. And this is Bernard, and it's going to show us some of the very, very rare pieces that exist, and a lot of them are just one-ofs or ones that have never, people have never even seen. So Bernard, tell us about this one.
Well, this is the midget race set made in about 1948. It sold for $250 back then. We think only about 5 of them were made. And you had 2 die-cast cars and a fire truck, and they raced around this track, and you had 2 controllers on this end that you could control them with. And the way they ran was you had this train track underneath with a magnet, and they would grab hold of the front end of the car and go around the track. And this is the only one known to exist. I'm still in the process of restoring it, and I've got to build a little, it came with a little wooden building. I had photographs of it, so I'm going to redo the building and finish up these cars and the track underneath, and I'm going to have this set. It'll be fun. It hasn't been raced since the 40s. So that's a very rare piece.
Okay, let's go to some of the sets or some of the very rare 1/32 scale. Let's start with that one.
Okay, a rare 1/32. All right.
Well, we're back again with Bernard Sampson of Bernard's Slot Car Museum in Houston, Texas, which you must make a trip out here to see. Here is one of the most rare sets in the world. This is a real treat for everyone.
This one is by National Toys. It's Italian. And this set was only made 1 year. This set had everything in it. So, what you had in this set is you had motorcycles with sidecars. You had Formula One racers. And you had sulkies. And the sulkies were interesting because when the wheels turned, the horse's legs moved.
Move up and down.
Yeah. So it looked like they were really running. You have your controllers and your transformer here. And I only know of one other set that exists.
And that's mint in the box.
Mint in the box.
In the box.
Beautiful.
Beautiful art too. We can't cover. Isn't that fantastic?
They don't do that anymore.
No.
That's for sure.
The kid that got this had really a great Christmas.
And luckily he didn't use it.
Yes, this one never used it.
He never used it, so
No,
that's,
no.
that's perfect. So.
All right.
Let's see, what next? What do you want me to do? This is an Italian set here. Sandra, this one is Conti. Conti Con Mi Go. They make trains.
Never heard of that.
Yeah, it's very rare.
Oh.
It's there's only 2 of these sets known to exist in the world.
Cobra mites.
Cobra lights, Dyna-Roots. No, the dragsters, 3 of the dragsters. There were 4 made. Those are rare. Yeah.
Really rare.
Those are really hard to get.
Really rare.
And it's weird how it came on the card with the front end sticking out.
Not a great packaging idea.
No. These are rare. These are Sandwell from Japan. Very rare. There's Pinwell in America. There's Uniropa, German.
German. Yeah. Roll car, you see a few of those.
Yeah. There's Hawk. And, there's Bullmark. And then over here, this is all Bandai up here. And it's Super Shell. That's Ginger, which is German. And these are unique. These were the first kit cars made.
They Yeah, the unique.
Yeah. And just a mixture of motors.
I have a couple of unique ones.
You do?
Yeah, is that the one with the wire chassis?
Yeah, they did a lot of vacuum form, different cars. This was their only hard body. It came out, I think, in '62. Yeah, something like that. Bunch of chassis, nothing.
There's some pro slot cars.
Yeah.
This is a space piece right here.
Oh,
One of the most unusual.
That's one of the most unusual. It's the moon
Rover,
moon
Range
rover.
Rover or something.
The
Not
moon
Range
Rover.
rover.
Yeah.
It's just
It's so cool.
It's just and yeah, I would say a very odd piece.
But these are sort of cool. These are all from Argentina. These are RAC. They're no longer made. Look
that.
beautiful.
I know. Look at that.
They're supposed to race really good. Just gorgeous. And I mean, yeah, they're just really.
The detail.
Yeah.
The detail
For
that they
vacuum
put into the over. Look at that.
Just gorgeous. And then, let's see, what else do we have? Very rare Nichimo set of MGs. Extremely rare. Those are also from Argentina right there. Sort of nice. I think he has about 4 cars from Spain. This is a 69 out of 100.
Never seen anything like that. Beautiful.
And then this is a Hispano, which is just, look how the figure is painted. Look at the dashboard.
It's detailed down to even the instrument panel.
Oh, look, there's his handkerchief coming
And he has a
out.
handkerchief and a tie,
Yeah.
eyebrows, everything.
This
Unbelievable.
Is number 300 cool car. This is another one they made. This is the one that was in The Godfather in the second chapter, where he was in Sicily and they blew his car up. Remember they
Is that
killed his
one?
wife to be. The same type of car.
Oh.
Beautiful. This is a proto slot, an MG. Just I really love that car. So unusual. And these are George Turner's. These are what they call Edwardian racers. You know, during the Edwardian times, pre-World War I.
And the sad thing is the people that they made all these, a lot of them would have been destroyed just by the kids racing. So that
Yeah.
it's nice to see them in pristine condition.
Yeah, that's a Cadillac.
Because you wouldn't find that normally on eBay or anything else like that.
This is a very rare piece. Slot Classic made this for a race. There was a fellow in England that went to Brooklands, and on the 100th anniversary of Brooklands racetrack, he did a rail racing event where people made rail cars, and he got Slot Classic to make 13 of these auto unions. So this is the only modern rail car ever made in the world. This is number 3 of 13.
And it's signed Brooklyn.
Unusual car. This is a Pegaso speed racer.
Saw one of those
Spain.
ones.
Yes, and the last time one of these appeared, the only time one of these ever appeared for sale on eBay was about 8 or 10 years ago. It went for $7,000.
So very rare piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, very
So
sought after.
I want to remind everybody, to stop by, give Bernard a call, let him know that you're coming so that you can see all these wonderful slot cars, because you're going to see things that you've never seen. I thought personally I had seen, hundreds and hundreds. There are thousands and thousands that you must see.
Well, here's some rare stuff. This is a company that existed in Germany for a very limited time. They made very limited numbers called Love Speed. And these go for very high prices now. But that's a 1939 Porsche. And they did 3 versions of this, and only 3 cars were actually used in races. And then they also did, I have a black one here as well, but they also did a beautiful, beautiful BMW. The detail is incredible, and it even has the pipe underneath. Just gorgeous. This is number 29 out of 400 made. Oh, here's another slot classic. This is a beautiful BMW. Look at the detail.
Yeah.
The spotlights, the dashboard, the driver,
The straps,
you know, the wheels, everything. Just
incredible detail.
beautiful car. It says, but it probably says fun game to race. And these have strange cars. The motor takes up almost all the room. They're about 1/43rd scale.
It's like a gremlin.
It looks a little bit like a Gremlin, but it's some kind of Soviet concept car or something. And these Soviet sets are very rare. The Russian sets are very rare in this country. They're rare anywhere. So we have about 8 or 9 different Russian sets. Then 1/24 scale chrome Mercedes 300 SL by Kongori, which was a Japanese manufacturer, one of the major manufacturers in Japan. And it's
That's a drop arm.
a small, tiny drop arm, a small one, a baby one. And then, oh, this is a great one here. This is Hasegawa. I like to say Japanese names, Hasegawa. You know, it sounds like a samurai. This is a Cadillac. Look at the size of this thing. And it has a drop in as well, a drop arm as well. Has an extended chassis, a special chassis, only made for 4 different Hawagasa cars that were real big ones. So it's a real unusual.
What year is that? What year was that made?
Probably about 66, thereabouts. Another Nietzsche boat. This is a go-kart for something a little different. I would say the scale's about 1/18th scale. Has a beautiful motor in the back. And again, a drop arm and a brass chassis. Now, there was a copy made of this in Hong Kong, which wasn't as nice, but we have that as well. And we have the set, which is super, super rare. The Hong Kong set. Massive, big set. Oh, here's a Japanese car, this Lotus. This is interesting because it's brass, the whole body. You had to assemble it. All brass. I need to polish it. Incredible detail. Very hard to put together.
Jim Clark?
Yeah, Jim Clark, of course. Yeah, we don't put second-rate drivers in our rare cars. Okay, now, let's see. Let's go with
Look at this.
one of the rarest HO cars in the world. This is by Marathon. Now for something different. This is an HO Marathon from Japan, the Volvo 550. And these things are as rare as gold. And they have little diamonds for the lights. Extremely rare car. And let's see, what else do we have? Well, we have some Tamiya cars. Everyone knows Tamiya. Tamiya was sort of the Cox of Japan. They were the best quality. This has an extended piece for their stock cars, a drop arm, and the Cox cars were beautiful.
And sometimes you see those on eBay
Yes.
for sale, and they go for very
High
good
prices.
high prices for sure.
Exactly. In fact, there's one on eBay right now, mint in the box for $3,000.
No.
So open up the wallet.
Yeah, open up the wallet, folks, and don't buy any more slot cars for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
So this is another rare piece. This is a Marathon Sherman tank. You can see there's the slot car chassis. I think there were 3 HO tanks made. Aurora made the Peace tank,
Yep.
and then there was the Minnick Conqueror tank. But this is the rarest of all of them.
Sherman.
Little Sherman tank. Let's see what else is interesting here. Oh, here's a rare piece for people that like Volkswagens. This is a Midori Volkswagen Bug Now, it's 1/24 scale, it's vacuum form, but it has hard plastic bumpers, and it has a really beautiful chassis,
Somebody
Midori
did a nice
chassis.
job.
Yeah,
A nice job building that.
yeah, they really did. But again, sort of a rare piece. I'm sure we have people in the house that like MGs. This is a Tokyo Plama MG, 1/32nd scale. Now you'll notice the driver looks sort of big. This was common on a lot of Japanese kits. They would put in either a figure way too small or a figure too big. This is a 1/24 scale figure, very similar to the Cox
Yeah,
figure.
it looks like a Cox.
Yeah, and well, those Cox figures are actually made in Japan. And there's your chassis, a little aluminum simple chassis. But again, a rather rare car as a slot car.
Back then had they, I think, magnet, used a magnet on a lot of them, they would have had more success like Scalextric, because I think certain cars, different than, in my opinion, than the 1/24 scale that run on a wooden track, that if you have the magnets, it helps the kids keep them on, because if it, you know, if they'll race, but after 4 or 5 crashes, they sort of lose interest. But if it was able to stay on the track, in my opinion, they would have had more success, I think.
And we'd have more old vintage slot cars
Yes.
left today.
Left today,
Now,
that's for
but what
sure.
they did do, they didn't do magnets. I guess they didn't think of it. But what some of the companies did is they had a pin in the front, a guide
Yeah, a
pin,
pin
and they
in
had
the
one in the rear. They'd still come out, but at least it was a little bit better.
So they didn't get destroyed, because believe me, like, if I had my old stuff, 4 lanes and 60 feet, back then, and we were putting up together, my father and I making the scenery and stuff like that, showed me how to do it out of plaster of Paris, and we needed a burnt out car, so I took one of my Strombecker cars and I melted it and made it look like it was destroyed, and it was destroyed.
He is a slot car criminal.
Yes,
Yes, I
exactly.
know. That
Slot
was-
car criminal.
Oh, what a
And it was
terrible.
probably a car worth $500-600
Yeah, it
to
was
get.
a Ferrari Testarossa.
Well, because he was underage, we can't really
Yeah,
charge him,
can't-
so we'll
can't
let him
charge.
get
I
away
was
with it.
13 years old. All right.
Yeah.
And
Okay,
that was 58 years ago, so.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I guess,
Yeah.
we couldn't
statute of-
prosecute you.
Yeah, the statute of limitations have run out on that. How about some 1/24 scale ones?
Sure, let's, yeah.
Here we go. Some of the stuff that most of the people are going to be more familiar with who race the 1/24 are going to be the classic cars and and others. Look at that.
There's a AMT, really nice Chevy.
That's the original, and you can tell the difference between the remake chassis. They make a remake chassis, but this is an original chassis.
Nice, big, beautiful American muscle car. And let's see, here's the T-Bird.
Another
Isn't that
rare one.
beautiful?
Beautiful. And most of them came with 36D motors.
Here's a more unusual one. Barracuda.
Barracuda. Look
You
at
don't
that.
see the Barracuda very often.
I've never seen that. And you can see it here, right here at the museum. So stop by.
If you can't afford the real car, come here. It's much better and cheaper.
And those are the AMT, I mean the classic cars.
These are thingies.
Yep, the Serpent.
Here's the chassis.
And that's a very rare chassis, because most of the time what you see with the classic cars is the stamped steel one.
Yeah.
And this is the one that's made with the wire and the brass. It's very rare.
Here's another one.
And is that the more conventional chassis? Yep. That's the more conventional chassis that most people have. And then of course the Astro 5.
Yeah.
Very, very nice, very popular. The problem that they had, from my experience back in the 60s, was when you raced them, the nose would break off and the people would just throw the body away.
That's why they're hard to find.
That's why they're hard to find.
Of course, we have the Batmobile,
The Batmobile, one of my favorites.
the knockoffs.
And that has the actual knockoffs, very rare to find. You can find reproductions, but those aren't
Right.
reproductions. Those are the real thing.
Isn't that a beauty?
Look at that T-Bird. And that's, show them the old motor. That's how the old motors, when first got into it back in the late 50s, early 60s, the old Mabuchi motors were gray, or if you were lucky, you got sometimes the one that they call the Red Bomb, which was a souped up version of just the basic gray motor. And the Red Bomb was a good motor for its time.
And then we have the AMT. And we have the early turnpike cars. There's a 62 T-Bird. And these had a piece that fit inside the track, inside the groove, so it couldn't come out.
And would just slide or spin around.
Right, and you had a steering wheel controller, and they made two different sets. Unfortunately, it didn't sell. The track was very difficult to assemble, and it was about this, literally this wide, and it just didn't catch on. And then they went to the more modern type of slot cars that we just showed.
Sometimes the good ideas are not good ideas.
There's a Hussein. Beautiful. Oh, what do we have? Oh, well, how about, who would ever think Czechoslovakia made slot cars? But they made beautiful slot cars back then. Well, this is recently made, but this is a Tatra from 1952.
And there's the magnets, so they...
Yep. Maybe 100 of them made. And then we have earlier. So here's a Shadow. Czechoslovakian. Company is called ITIS.
It's interesting, the different guide flags and guide pins.
Oh, yeah. Very wide. Here's a Tatra truck. Okay, you ready?
Yep.
All right. Here's some more cars from the Soviet Union. Now, this is a very interesting car. You'll say, hey, that Lamborghini looks like a Scalextric. And it was, except it was manufactured in Moscow, this particular car. And the engine, the guides, all of it is different from the Scalextric. And it's a different color that was ever produced. These are extremely rare. We have two sets, and these are the only ones known to exist.
Looks like little 13D motors.
There's a Soviet, another one, looks sort of like the other one that we saw. There's the hammer and sickle, right there on the front of the car. The little hammer and sickle. And you're probably wondering, well, what does a Russian motor look like? Well, they were sort of crude, but that's a Russian motor.
Wow.
Very different. What do we have? We have some very early slot cars, about 1960, handmade in Australia. Carved out of wood, early motors, early
Like a
type
Pitman
guide.
type of motor.
Yes, and a pin guide, beautifully made. OK Cater. Now, OK Cater was a Hong Kong company, but it was the best quality of all the Hong Kong cars. So here is a nice a Scarab. 124 scale.
Scarab.
Yeah. Really nice. A nice metal chassis. Not equal to the quality of European and American stuff, but still not bad. Well, here's a station wagon that raced. Only in home car.
Would you race this thing?
Yes, would you race this? Would they figure people race
The
these?
station wagon.
Very unusual. So here is a German company. This is a Gamma, G-A-M-A. You see beautiful, beautiful Formula One car.
Nice detail.
Yeah. We're going to go south of the border. Mexico, a company called Industria Plastica, made their own slot cars. They were copies of Strombecker. And they look just like them, but if you look very carefully, you can see there's a difference in the molding and the guides. And they made them for several years. They copied all the Strombecker cars, but then they made their own car. The Mercedes 300. They made it in two versions. This is 1/32nd scale. Strombecker never made this car. These are very rare, very hard to find. And of course, the Mercedes 300, no matter how badly it's modeled, is always beautiful. This is a set from France from the late 40s. This is a company called Peruna. This is the car. It's die-cast Alfa Romeo. There's where it picked up the contacts, and these kept it within the trough. And the track is handmade of bakelite.
Stay in there.
Yeah, and wood, all handmade. And the car would just drive up and around. Again, extremely rare set. Maybe 4 known to exist. So now, we went south of the border to Mexico, but you know, that's not far enough south. We're going to go down to Brazil. And Australia was the big company and the big toy company in Brazil. And in slot cars, they were like Scalextric in England or Strombecker here in the United States. Now you'll notice some of these cars look like the Scalextric car, except when you turn them upside down. So it was too expensive to sell anything from outside the country in Brazil. So Australia made contracts with people and made these cars. Now that looks just like a Gilbert,
AC Gilbert.
AC Gilbert, but the chassis are different.
And it's the front end steering.
Yeah, it's quite different. And they also made HO cars. Like there's a really cool Volkswagen. No one else ever made this model. Or, look at that, the Simca. Nobody ever made that as a stock car. Extremely rare. Look at the Renault. No one's ever made that model Renault. So they made this car. This is a Cooper. This was their own design. They made a car similar to the Cucaracha that Cox made, but it's not the same. It is a totally different body. But look at that. It reminds you of the Cox. But see, the motor there says Australia.
Looks like a little 16D knockoff.
Yes, I think it is. And these things are hard to find because they were never really exported. They did Sulkies, which were copies of the GG Sulkies out of France. So they made a lot of different models, and then they did a whole series of 1/24 scale cars a little bit later on. And here's one of them. Nice chassis.
Very nice.
Very nice. And what do we have here? We have a 1934 set made in Germany by Markley. Some people say it's a BMW. Some say it's an Alpha. Some say it's just not really any particular car. But I think it's because of the grille that it may be based on a BMW. It's a rail car set. There's your zonkers. And it ran through the rail like that. Here's your motor. All metal. I'd say about 1/24 scale. These are rare. Well, here's some oddities. These are like little matchbox die-cast cars that have been made into minor slot cars. Look at that. How tiny.
Very ingenious.
Yeah. Only the British. British do a lot of that. What else? Well, here's some interesting cars. Here's a Honda, hand carved out of wood. Nice little MRC chassis, slimline motor. Since I live in Houston, I have to show you the first or the oldest surviving slot car in Houston. And that's this Ferret. Really nice wheels, hand carved. This is all carved out of wood, simple brass chassis. This car was made by William Caldwell in 1961. Now, this fellow was in a wheelchair, and he actually made rail cars in the late 50s and had a rail car track at his home, and people would go to his home and race. And then I think around 60, 61, he set up a slot car track. He passed away, I think, in the 80s, and this is the last car that we have left. But it's the oldest Houston slot car. So a bit of history for Houston. Here's an interesting, these are rare. This is an Auburn toy rubber race car that's been converted to slot. Look at that beautiful chassis. Look at the steering unit. Out of this world. I have a friend that has one of these. But people would take, and you know, in the early period, there weren't a lot of different slot cars. So people bought toys and they made them into slot cars. And it was really quite common. All right, now here we go. And this was made for the Brooklyn race as well.
And it's marked.
Yeah, it's marked. Brooklyn's 1907 to 2007, and it's number 8 of, I think that's 10 or 12. But this was the first car to win the race at Brooklands in 1907. And again, 12 made. One of them right here, probably the only one in the United States. Then we have early rail cars. This is a die-cast body of a Bugatti, and you may not recognize the colors, but that's the Prince of Siam. So he actually came, I guess he's a bit of a playboy, and he really liked to race cars, and he raced all over Europe. And this is his rail car. And this car was made by British soldiers stationed in Germany. This is another rail car. This is a hard, early vacuum form body by Super Shells. And this was made and owned and raced by the founder, G.K. Jarvis. This is from the late 50s. This is in several slot car books. You can see all handmade chassis. There's your wipers. There's the 2 pins to keep you in the rail. Again, one of a kind. It looks like a Scalextric head, early Scalextric head inside. Bob Clintus. Bob Clintus was the archivist for the Indy 500, but he also designed cars for Strombecker, and he made his own cars that he raced. And we have a bunch of them here, and they're very, very interesting. Here's one right here. You see, that's a Strombecker driver. The body is all made of wood. You see these? None of that is a decal. These are hand painted. It's unbelievable. And you see all the fine detail. Here's his chassis. You see it's an early Strombecker chassis, about 1962. But look at the detail on that. It's hand painted. We have about 8 or 9 of these cars. Here's another one. Here's a midget. As you know, midgets are really big. So what he did is he took a Strombecker midget body and customized it. Look at the pipes. Look at the rails. Everything is handmade. Again, hand painted. Everything on there, no decals.
Another
handmade chassis. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to believe that something like that could be made. I know I couldn't do it. You know, I get glue all over the windshields and ruin the cars. I usually drop them on the floor while I'm working on them. Again, beautiful body. There's a little screen in the front. Front wheels are Strombecker. Everything else is carved out of wood. Early Strombecker motor.
It's a lot of patience.
Yeah. And they're not in the best of shape because he actually raced these cars. Now, I have a dear friend who passed away many years ago. He's from England. His name is Derek Cooper, and he was very famous racer. He used to show up with a violin case, and that's how he carried his cars. And he wore a cape, and he had long hair. And he got serious in the business around 1989. And he and I were good friends. He hand carved a lot of cars. He was one of the major dealers in the world, but he made a lot of cars out of wood. And so here is one of his cars. This is a 1908 Fiat. The figures are handmade. The body is carved out of wood. Isn't that beautiful? 1/32 scale.
Wow.
Very, very nice. So he would make one car a month for me, and he did whatever I asked him to do. Here's a Brooklands Racer, a Bentley. Again, all carved out of wood. There's the supercharger. There's his chassis, all handmade. Carved out of wood. Not easy to replace. Now we go into some early French stuff. These are Joma sets. And these cars are die cast, 1/43 scale. They're very heavy. Look at these early contacts. These are like the VIP contacts from 1957. Easily broke.
No kidding.
Brass chassis. 1/43 scale. These are very, very rare sets. There's another set down here that has a station wagon, 2 cars. And here's a set where they did plastic models. They used Norev. Norev made all types of plastic toy cars. They used Norev bodies. This is a Simca and a Citroen. And you can see here how they made them into slot cars very early. These would be about 1960. Again, a very, very unusual and rare set. Now we come to the early stuff. As you go deeper into the museum, you go back in time. So this is like a time machine, and it's just in our imagination. Is the earliest slot cars. We have a set of 2 cars. These are Stutz Bearcats made by Lionel, all metal, in 1912. You see the chassis, how they ran. There's the motor. Everything is metal except the drivers. They're like plaster. Going a little bit further up in time, we go to, these cars were made by Kennedy, Patrick Kennedy, 1932 to 1934. These Bugattis, which are about 1/32 scale, they're all metal. They're rail cars, as you can see here. This belonged to the first commercial track in the world in England. The first time you could pay money and race on a track. We have 5 of those cars here. Again, extremely rare. What else we have? Here's a rare one. Tipco, 1937, Germany, before World War II. This is the first electric Volkswagen ever made. It's 1/43 scale, 10 plate. These are where you adjusted the carbon brushes. There's where it picked up the current. And there it is.
Wow.
Of course, it's a split window. What else could it be? And they did other cars. Here's a truck they did. And these are not lined up. These are electric. They raced on a figure-8 track. Then we have Safer. These are from 1947. These are Italian. And again, there's the pickups, electric motors, and these raced on a 10-plate figure-8 track. The Italian stuff is very interesting. We call it the Italian miracle because Italy was ruined during the war. And yet from 47, 2 years after the war ended, till 52, 53, they made about 5 different electric race car sets. America didn't do that. England didn't do that. Germany didn't do that. Nobody did it but Italy. and they made 5. And these were very expensive sets. You know, electric set, can you imagine? It was 5 times the price of a wind-up. So only very wealthy families could buy these for their kids. So why did the Italians do all of that? And we know they love cars. Maybe that's part of it. But it's very strange that all these companies made these cars. And then after 1953, nothing. Nothing until the 1960s. Very unusual. Here's another one from the same period. This is 1942, Scylla. This is actually a Studebaker Commander. And there's your contacts, your electric motor. Why did they use a Studebaker Commander? Because the body was big enough to fit on the chassis. This is one of the biggest mysterious cars I have in my collection. The car itself is a Gaz, Soviet. They started making the real car right after the war in '46, and with this grille pattern until 1954. Little silver car. I'm going to show you the motor made. Here's your pin guide, and here's your contacts for each lane. But what drove the car was not the wheels, but this rubber wheel in the center. Very strange. Well, I tried to find out more about this, who made it. I'm sure it was a single lane set, probably similar to the Bub, but nobody in Russia can tell me. I've contacted toy museums, slot car guys in Russia. Nobody has ever seen this car. So I think it was probably, you know, a Soviet factory would make a run, and they probably made a few hundred sets, and that's it. But one day we'll discover more about this. So here's a Bub car, 1953 to 55. Now this car is not plastic, it's Bakelite, very brittle and heavy. It has a brass chassis, it has a pin in the back and a pin in the front, and you'll notice the contacts pick up the electricity from inside the groove, not on top of the groove. These are very rare cars. Couldn't tell you what kind of car it is because who knows? It's just one of those cars. And then some companies were experimenting with making slot cars, but they never did. CIJ from France and this Renault, and this is an experimental piece, a prototype. You can see the guides, worm gear. It's got some markings on it, but it is a real prototype that never went into production. Who knows why they didn't do it? Well, this is a very early piece from the 50s, so maybe they thought, well, we're not going to make any money. Let's continue making our toys. CIG, you ever hear of them? No, they probably went out of business. They should have made slot cars. Maybe they'd still be in business. Bad choice on their side. Well, then we have, what about American-made stuff? 1937 marks, not the Russian marks, the American mark. And these are tin plate. There's your contacts. And they made 2 different sets. They made 4 versions of this car. The exact same mold, different numbers. This is called Rocket. This one's called the Hawk. And there was a green one, which we have, and a red one. And they ran on a 2-lane track. Another prototype by Riches in England, 1947. And these are in the magazines. That's how we found out about them. He made 3 cars in a race set. You'll notice this is a lot like the Turnpike AMC cars. It went into the slot, so it couldn't come out, but it could turn. You can see everything looks handmade. And then very complicated system. It never went into production. We have 2 of the cars. The third one, no one knows what happened to it. He made a few other types of vehicles. I bought this in England. Someone showed up when I was staying with Derek Cooper, who I talked about earlier, and said, would you like these? And I said, boy, would I. So I've had those since. Of course, in the early days, there were so many different systems, and no one knew which system would be the best. So this is a small company called Wellcut, and they took die-cast bodies and made them into slot cars. This was almost a garage operation. They probably didn't make more than 100, 200 sets. In fact, a complete set has never been found. I have the track, I have the transformer, I have some of the pieces, and I have the 2 cars, but the set itself has never been found. They only made them from 1959 to about 1960. And then we get into, well, I don't know how to explain it. Yeah. This is American. This company was 1928 to 1931. This is 1931. This is a fire truck. You see that front bumper? It's spring loaded. Those contacts touch a fence and pick up the negative and positive and use the transformer to control the speed. But look at the size, and it's heavy too. Very heavy. This one.
Oh, chrome version?
Yeah, there's a chrome version. I always thought that was a great car, the Dodge Charger.
Oh, they're all great. Everything's great.
Yeah, we love slot cars. What can I
Yes.
say? My Chinese anniversary of the Chinese Republic. Is that cool?
Wow.
I'm trying to find more.
More of those. Ah, see, somebody did the right thing.
Hmm?
The old padlock motor.
Oh yeah. Well, a few slot cars.
Yeah, they, because those things, and I would tell people, I said, back in the 60s, when we raced those on the drag strip, there was an 18-volt class and a 36-volt class. And the 36-volt class used those big-ass motors, and if you made it through the run, great. If not, it blew up. Just, I mean, literally, just
Really?
yeah, there was a guy tried to do it this commercial raceway. I'm not going to name names. They might see it. Yeah, this guy wanted him to build him. Said, "This is going to be the fastest Group 7 car you've ever seen." And I'm thinking, oh, it took off in about 10, 15 feet, blew up.
Really?
I mean, the motor just, and the chassis lost the back end. Bam!
It must have been a sight to see.
Well, yeah, that was about $1,000 worth of parts. Back then, that was back in the 80s.
Can't even imagine.
Wow, it just was foolish. It was foolish. You can't, you have open cars that are doing 100K, you know, or higher RPMs, and you're trying to pull one wheel, another wheel.
It's sort of stupid.
It's stupid, but that was.
RussKit did it right with
Yes.
the 2 motors.
Yeah, RussKit with the Black Widow.
The Black Widow.
Yep.
Let's see.
RussKit Black Widow.
I guess we need to sort of come around.
There's my dyno
Yeah.
charger.
Yeah.
That's the Scarab. I still have that.
Let's see. Here's a nice one. This is a Strombecker 124 scale. Turbo.
Those are the original versions are in high demand. A place called EJ's Hobbies
Yeah.
made knockoffs of
That's
these
right.
different chassis and stuff, but these were because of the wheels and the Strombecker Scuttler or Scorcher, whatever it came in. They're very, very collectible, very nice.
Here's Eldon, made toy cars, but they also tried to go into more professional. So this is one of the
Yep, there's
nice
Eldon.
kits.
13D motor.
Yeah, they made 2 different ones. They made this one and a car in 124 scale. That they tried to do more professional. Here's a Cox. Here's a Ferrari by Cox. Let's see. This thing open here.
Nice to see them so perfect.
Oh look, it was $1.99. I didn't pay $1.99 for this. I think they cheated me. I think they charged me a whole lot more.
Yeah,
I'll have to go call the guy up.
there it is.
Yeah, there it is. Just
Perfect.
ready to go. X150 motor.
Yep. And it was interesting. A lot of the places would, Rinelli or some of the other ones would give different names to their motors. They're the same motor, but they'd give it and they'd say faster than that, and it wasn't any faster.
Here it is.
Oh, Ratfink and Mr.
Yes.
Gasser.
A couple of rare ones here.
Oh,
in the
these
box.
are super rare.
Yeah. Mr. Gasser.
Gasser.
When you open it up, it doesn't look like much because everything's hidden underneath.
Yeah, but that's beautiful.
And then we have a rat fate.
Yeah.
Of course, in the 60s, I had rat fate rings, everything, everyone. All kids wanted a rat fate
fate
for at least 1 year. It was the coolest thing.
And they would break.
Yeah.
And how many ended up in trash can?
There it
Beautiful
is.
purple.
Yeah. There it is.
Rat fink.
Rat fate. Oh, let's see, what do we have here? Here's a good one. Here's a very rare Lindbergh Cobra. Lindbergh got into manufacturing cars rather late, and so they never sold a whole lot of them because the market was already slowing up. There we go. There's the Lindbergh.
And the problem that we had from a raceway standpoint as being a racer, and most of the racers can identify with that, these cars no longer could keep up
Yes.
with the scratch built cars.
That's right.
Number one, because of the motor
Yeah.
was too big and too heavy, and so like if the cornering ability of the cars with the scratch built chassis just blew these away, and so those guys, you wouldn't buy them anymore.
And they were heavier with the hard
Heavier.
body. Yeah.
And with a hard body instead of the flex end.
There's another one, a Carrera, a Porsche Carrera. Oh,
So be careful, don't drop them. Yeah, don't drop your stuff. Yeah.
there. What else? Here's a Fowler from Germany, 132nd scale Porsche 904.
And see, that's the true 1/32
Mhm.
scale. And now we have, they're
Bigger.
bigger. And what they did is they widened them out and made them a little longer.
Here's your first Gilbert, 1960.
Look at that steering.
And look at the motor. They didn't work very well. They went to regular stuff a year later. We have a bum slot from, they made like 10 of these. Beautiful Buick out of Spain. And
Are they still around, bum slot?
they are, yeah. They went through a period where they didn't make stuff for a while. And of course we have
Rigged.
beautiful chassis. Drop arm.
These were cars that we started to get in the mid 60s.
Yes.
And we used to race these. I even have some photos, and I still have some of my, a few of them, because they had 26Ds, which were a little faster. And the problem with all the Mabuchi motors was melting of the end belt. And so we had to take brass, the little brass hat type things, put them over the posts, and then we also used to make our own little brass plates so that it would hold the heat and not melt, because in long races and stuff like that they used to melt, and you would have the smell of the nylon or whatever it was made of.
That's why I never raced, I collect instead. Here's a nice Riggin HO. Has a nice little brass chassis.
Yeah, those are very collectible. The Riggin ones, they now come out with, people try to imitate that.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Because those are such good handling HO cars.
Yeah, what else do we have? Let's see. We have over here,
More classics.
yeah, there's some classics.
Darby's.
Arby's. There's a nice one. Now, how many of these survived when they
None.
crashed with the nose?
The first time it went into the wall, they break.
Yeah.
The
They look
Sonic
so
Needle.
beautiful. Yeah, they look so
Sonic
beautiful.
And that's their version of their Batmobile.
Right. And then we have, let's see, we have Lionel, we have Minnick from England, we have Rin from England. Here's another Porsche by Joly out of France, 1/40th scale. And here's a postcard slot car. Look at that.
Look at that, Sandra.
You see, it moves up and down the slot car track, and when the battery works, it makes an engine noise.
Wow.
So,
Probably not too many of those around.
No, I'm glad I bought one. Let's see, what do we have next? Guess we have to do a midget.
Monogram?
Yep, monogram.
Monogram.
Monogram, beautiful car. Another one, 124 scale. Look at that.
Monogram.
Yeah, monogram. Big motor.
Yeah, 36V.
This is Strombecker of France. BMW motorcycle and racer. Here is an original. The ghost sound of slots, the Revels.
Yeah.
The sound, music, and language of slot car racing, America's newest hobby. That's an original reprise. The Restless Rookie.
Oh.
Fastest Little Racer. Little Stalkers. Cobra. My Little Slot Coupe. Wait till next time. A lot of people said that.
That's
It was very normal at races. My Ferrari GTO. My baby digs slot car races. Only because she wants to be with them. She really didn't like them. Slot City, where you would hang out all the time.
And
the
my
Lotus 23. And there it is.
Yeah.
That's the original. They make a CD of it.
Yes, I
That's
have the CD.
original.
I have the CD. I played it one time at a raceway, and people were just like, "Oh my God, those horrible songs!"
Oh, man.
Oh, cool.
Let's see.
One of the most collectible ones.
Right. There's a Porsche. There's the chassis. Vacuum form body with some hard plastic parts. Very popular in the 60s.
Do you have the wire wheels?
No, I don't know on that one, but I have the wire wheels. I have a set of the wire wheels on another section there. This is the earlier RussKit. And you can see it's got the original wire wheels. This is a vacuum form body, and you had to make the chassis yourself. There's the RussKit motor.
Oh, the wire wheels.
Yes. They were wonderful. Everyone loved them. They go for pretty big bucks now.
Yeah, they can go upwards of $400 for a pair.
Easily. Now here's Paula car. I'll show you one of the rarest cars in the world. The Samurai. And the blue one. The blue one is super rare. The light one is super rare, but the blue one, probably the only one known to exist. There's a really nice chassis. These were made about 1967. And then they went to, in 1967, they went to vacuum form in 1968. You see it's a totally different chassis. ESO. Very rare.
Beautiful.
Not as rare as the Samurai though. Then we have this. Well, so what did the first one look like? This is the first Paula car. It's a Ferrari. It's not a very good, it's an artistic rendition. Let's just be nice and say it's an artistic view of it. But look how weird the contacts are. Little wheels that are spring loaded. Look at that. You don't see that on any other car. That's what started them off right there. We're in Aurora and K&B. Let's start off with Big Daddy Roth, the guy that designed Mr. Gasser and Ratfink. And there he is in his own truck.
Very rare.
Very rare. This came sold separate, or you could buy it in a set that's very rare that had blue track. So,
Yeah, Big Daddy Roth.
Big Daddy Roth. Everyone liked his stuff in the 60s. Then, of course, we have HO. Here's an early vibrator. This is a little station wagon. Has an AC vibrator motor. These came out in 1960s. And then in 63, they came out with the newer Thunderjet motor. Though most people may not, if you're a racer, you don't think this is exciting, but if you're a collector, you know it is. So we have Prefo. These are from the former East Germany. We have Marx, and we have Troby from France, and SMP from Germany. So, what is this? You ever seen a Marx car like that?
No.
Probably not, because it's a prototype that never went into production at the very end in 67, 68. They were trying to get into the regular racing. There's their chassis, and you can see its model number at Garrod. That's where they did their testing, and it's dated 3/21/1967.
If they would have produced that, they might have had a different, that's beautiful.
Yeah, they may have stayed in business,
Yeah, that's beautiful.
but they didn't. Here's a beautiful prototype, never went into production. An MGTG. Look at that, isn't that gorgeous? Let's see, this is 8/18/1964. Steering, beautiful.
Yeah.
Why didn't they make it? Who knows? Nobody really knows. Now, a lot of y'all are probably familiar with the Marx figures. They came in some of the sets. They're not too hard to get. But here are the rare ones. They also, and most people don't even know this, they also made them in HO. So it's the same figure in HO. The HO figures, extremely difficult to get. Yes, extremely. Well, let's look at an East German car. Here's one. What did they race in communist East Germany? Well, here's the 1/32nd scale. Looks a little bit like a Porsche 904, but it's not. It's an RS 1000. It's an East German sports car. Yes, they made other cars than Trabants. Here's the motor, a small little German style motor, your contacts, very lightweight, and that's it. From the German Democratic Republic. This is a car that has quite a story. This is a Rolls Royce by Marx. The Rolls Royce is not rare, but this one is rare. This is die cast and silver plated. And Marx made 10 of these for their executives for Christmas. How did I get this? I have no idea, but I either got it off of eBay or someone approached me and sold it to me that had gotten it. But as far as I know, the only one that still exists. Sterling silver metal Rolls Royce by Marx for executives. So let's look at another prototype. Here's a 1/43rd scale prototype Indy car, front engine. You see it says here to be returned, but it never went into production. But they did make it in 1/30th scale.
So they upsized it.
Yeah, here's the same car, identical, just upsized. Even the contacts are the same, only smaller. This is, of course, the rare one. Then we have, well, Troby was another company out of France. People don't know much about it. This is one of their rarer cars, a little Mini Cooper. There's your motor. It's a Bueller German motor. And nothing super fancy. They were pretty simple cars. They didn't sell a whole lot. They did slot and slotless. They only did 1/32nd scale, except they did one HO set with Peugeots in it, which we have, of course, here in the museum. For France, it was like the Scalextric or Strombecker of France. The early cars, here's a Ferrari Testarossa. It's about 1/30th scale, but it's an AC vibrator motor. And when it ran, it made so much noise. It was like an engine noise. But they were almost indestructible the way they were made with the plastic. They were made for kids to destroy them. Recently, they're back in business. And they started making some of the cars in their catalog that they never produced. And this is one still true to the original design. These are made very limited numbers. Let's see. Now we have National Toys. National Toys is an Italian company. They made sort of toy-like pieces, and we saw a set earlier that had everything in it. But here's like an early Ferrari Super Squalo. Very, very rare car.
Casey, don't move.
Very rare car. A lot of the National Toys are very collectible. And these are SCX. These are made in Spain. Here's a vacuum form, 1/32nd. Beautiful Jaguar. Look at that chassis. Nice, huh? Little wheels. They also made hard body cars as well.
Yes.
And they're still in business. They still make cars. Here's a newer one. This is a Citroen. In my opinion, one of the most beautiful and futuristic cars ever made in the world. And I happen to own one for 6 months. It had no pedal, it had a button for the floor, and it had Citromatic coming out of the dash. And everything was foam rubber, and you could drive this car, not the slot car, but the real car on 3 wheels. Had air suspension.
Hmm.
Then we come down here, Stabo. Stabo was a German company, and they made some really nice cars. Look at that. Look at that BMW. Isn't that beautiful? 1/32nd scale. Says made in Western Germany, because remember we just saw the Prefo made in East Germany. These are better quality. Then we have Eldon. Since we're talking about quality, most of the Eldon are very toy-like. They're not very nice, but they're very popular. Yes, here we go. Exactly. Here's your dragster, and we have a dragster set at the museum. Has a drop arm, and very, very nice. Yeah, they made 1/24th, 1/32nd, and of course HO like this Futura. And we have the set that came in. And let's see. Oh, and then we have Lili Lidi from Mexico, and they made Eldon in Mexico. So here's a nice Corvette with lights, electric lights. You see it looks a lot like the Eldon chassis, but it's really different material. The guides are different, the motor's different, and the molding is a little different. It'll say here Lili Lidi instead of Eldon. And they made cars in 1/32nd scale, and they made HO. And here's a very rare HO, Thunderbird by Lili Lidi, not made by anyone else. Little convertible. These are almost impossible to find, the early ones. This way. About 1963 on this one with the chassis and the motor. They did several versions. The rarest version was made in 66, 67 with an all-metal chassis, and it was only made for one set. We have the set over here, of course. It was a 4-lane set. But
Did that have the buttons to mount the chassis? Was that?
No, that's another one. This screws in. It's a much more rare. No, the button chassis is pretty normal. You know, we have several of them here. They did both metal and they did plastic. But this is a little bit earlier car. And I got to keep this away from him.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know, he may have matches or something.
No.
I don't want to lose any of my cars.
No, you don't want to lose that one.
No. Then we have, of course, let's see. We have, well, everybody likes midgets these days, so I guess we'll have to show you a midget. There's a Strombecker midget, 1/32nd scale. And there it is with its little motor and everything else. Wasn't very made, you know, the front axles would break because that's one little piece holding it in. And of course, all the parts would break and fall off. Somebody could make a lot of money just making the accessories, the chrome accessories, and selling those. And then we have some 1/24 scale stuff. So here's a very rare one. This is from 1959. Nice hot rod. It's very rare because it's the hard top version. You can see it's a 3.5 volt Caco motor with a long shaft, a 2-piece shaft.
Look at that.
Yeah, you don't see these every day.
No.
In fact, you never see them. And then there was an arcade game made that used Strombecker cars. This is one of those cars. Looks like a regular D-Jag, but look, somebody put screws in the top. You would normally never do that to your lovely car.
No.
But that's so you could mount this horrible but utilitarian chassis on there so it could run on the arcade.
That was the arcade games had
Like
a
a
short
pinball.
life.
Yeah, like a pinball game.
Yeah.
Oh, here's another record. We have the Revels. Here's Strombecker's record. Sounds of Road Racing. Doesn't have any rock and roll, unfortunately, like the other one, but it has sounds of engine noises and
stuff like that.
yeah. Since the cars didn't produce sound, they did this record
So that you could play that while you were racing.
and you could just sort of imagine it was coming from the
It's
cars.
making stuff from the cars.
And here's a very it's okay, folks. It's a 2-part wheel, and they always fall off. That's why they changed it. But this is a very early Maserati from 1960. You say, well, this is a real common car. What's rare about it? We see dozens every day on eBay. What's rare about this is 1960, It uses a nylon chassis. The cockpit is totally open. And that was the earliest version of this. It was only made for 1 year. And there's hot rods and Bronner Hawks and of course all the other Strombecker stuff. Now we're at Carrera. Most of these are new Carrera cars. This is stuff you've probably seen. You know, here's a nice Corvette that they made, but we have some rare stuff. Like for instance, here's a motorcycle. Look at that. Real nice Honda. There's a drop arm, so you can do wheelies. It's no fun having a motorcycle if you can't do wheelies. But these are mostly new, 137 and 124. Then we go down to more Carreras. Only these Carreras are they're older. Carrera dune buggy. You don't see very many of these. They're very fragile. The figures are actually, the bodies are vacuum formed. There's a little drop arm. This used a special Carrera system that could only work on its own track. Here's a Porsche, 124 scale, vacuum formed body. There's your older Carrera chassis. And here's the same car they did in 132nd scale. You can see the difference in size, different chassis. Carrera did that with a lot of their cars. That is a Riva Rossi set.
Oh.
Look at that car. That's die cast. This is made about 1947, 48. Very rare. You don't see those every day. Probably a Fiat of some sort. Now we've got Scalextric. There's Batmobiles. There's all kinds of Scalextric stuff here. Oh yeah, all of that. But here's, for collectors, here's the kit car that they made. They only made 2 kit cars. That's the Porsche 132nd scale. And here's the Cobra. Very nice Cobra. They didn't sell very well. They're pretty delicate. Then we'll go down. But here's where you really get the Scalextric stuff. This is a chrome 1932 Alfa Romeo. This is not a car that's been re-chromed. This one and the Bentley were made in very limited numbers, about 20 each, for executives at Scalextric, and they were stolen. And a few appeared on the market years later, and I was able to get 2 of these in the original Scalextric boxes with the numbers and everything on it. I bought it from a Scalextric dealer who's still around, and so they're very rare. Beautiful car to begin with. Then we have 124 scale stuff. So here's a Scalextric Ferrari. Now they made in 1968. They made a 3-lane 124 scale set, but they only gave you 2 cars. So you had 2 Formula 1 cars and you had 2 sports cars. You see a nice chassis, drop arm, beautiful detail. These go for, you know, $800 or whatever nowadays.
Well, back in the 60s, mid-60s, with all the cars that had the plastic parts, as they're finding out now with the 132nds, they're fragile, and in the quest for speed, as we did towards the late 60s, early 70s, we had the rewound motors and everything, and so when you had the plastic stuff and it broke,
That was it.
that was it. So we went to Lexan or Butyrite.
So think about it. When you're on eBay and you look at a bunch of slot cars and they're missing parts, hey, they're missing the same parts. They're missing the mirrors, they're missing the bumpers, and if you think you can buy that car and you're going to find the separate parts later, maybe, but the odds are you won't, because there's a reason those parts are missing. You're better off buying the complete car if it's not rare. If it's a really rare car, then you buy it no matter what the condition is.
So
So
you may not see another one.
you may not see another one. It's happened to me, folks. Talk about rare. Here's a 1959 Austin Healey tin plate by Scalextric. See, it has a very interesting gimbal. It's how they ran on the rubber track. But these are very rare. Now, here's something you don't see every day. Get it out. These are original 1/24 scale Scalextric figures. These came from Peru, believe it or not. I have 2 boxes. These are the mechanics. They made 3 of them for the 1/24 scale cars, and I have another box, which you're just going to have to imagine, because I'm not going to bring it down, that has the drivers in it. But that's the original box, 1/24. What is this worth? $600 maybe? Something like that. $200 a person plus the box.
Yeah.
There's some Bugattis. Scalextric Bugattis. Made in England. We have a yellow one, a green one, and I got a black one. Here's some Auto Unions. James Bond.
James Bond.
The original. And I have the Mercedes that chased him, the bad guy. Of course, in a black car. What else? What other color would it be? Really early stuff. The bottom shelf here is all VIP, Victory Industries. They made their first set the same year as Scalextric in 1957. And these are a bunch of their cars down here, all in 1/32 scale. And then above it, we have Airfix and MRRC. Now, MRRC made some of the first commercial rail cars in the world. And we have some of them here. Here's one. This is a Ferrari. It's a vacuum form body. That's what's called the wipers. There's the motor, and the chassis is made of zinc. Very, very rare. Here's an MRRC 1/24 scale car. Look at that. Beautiful chaparral. Nice motor, steering, beautifully made vacuum form body.
A lot of the racers, mid-60s and stuff like that, we made the Ackerman steering, and you had to make your own, and you made it out of brass or whatever you had, you know, just to make it, didn't do anything for the car, it just made it look cool.
But people, yes, and people thought maybe it helped them, but it
them.
really didn't,
It
did
didn't.
It didn't.
No,
Yeah.
because we found out that the front wheels in the slot car, the modern day slot car doesn't touch and has no function. So, but it was fun. As a kid,
Exactly.
It
You
was
wanted
fun.
steering, anything you could add.
anything to make it look real.
Here is extremely rare MRC pistol controller, 1959. There's 3 of these in the entire world. That's it.
That's it.
Bakelite, not plastic. So when you bought a brand new rail racer in 1958 or 59, what did it look like? Here it is. That's what it looked like. And there's your instructions. And there's your rail car. Not many of these are.
No.
But what did they make before? They made indoor gasoline race cars. This is an MRRC from about 1954 with steering, all metal body. These are called zonkers, and the rail ran between them. You had a string on this and you pulled it, and that started the motor, and that adjusted the carburetor. And they made a lot of noise indoors. See, in the United States, they did tether racing with these. They hooked a string on them, and they raced them outside, or they raced them on a rail track, but outside. But in England, they couldn't do it. Don't ask me why. Maybe because there wasn't enough room. Maybe because it rained too much. But they raced them indoors with an actual track and figures. So you know it made a lot of noise, and it really smelled bad. This shelf, we have a bunch of different cars. What is the rarest car on the shelf? The rarest car is right here. It's Elmoden DMI. It's a little Maserati made about 1960, 61, made in Denmark. Yes, Denmark made slot cars. Beautiful, has a German motor, very interesting braided contacts, beautiful details. Elmoden, they made a green one and a red one. And before this, they made 2 Volkswagen Bugs from 1958. Oh, look at the controller. Look at that. Isn't that something?
Little steering wheel.
Little steering wheel to control the speed. And if you're wondering, well, what did that motor look like? Here it is. Look at that motor. You ever seen anything like it?
No.
I never have either, but made in Germany. Fred and Barney Flintstone. These are from Hong Kong. They look funny, but they're rare. And they go for a lot of money because you don't see them very often. And usually this piece, the canopy, is missing.
It's
Yeah,
broken off.
exactly. Yeah, our kids are. Here is a Spitfire by GRC. Sort of interesting car.
And those were also available like as, you would get them at the gas stations.
Yes. So,
I have the orange one, I don't have the white one.
and then we have just a couple of custom-made cars, nothing special. Here's a Tatra, Czechoslovakian car, uses a VIP driver, and look at that body. It's carved out of wood. Looks like a monogram chassis.
It looks like a monogram.
Monogram chassis, made in England. Why in England do they make a Tatra? I don't know, especially this model. But it's one of those mysteries we'll never know. And then everybody buys something they wish they hadn't.
This is it.
So here's mine. Look at that thing. Look at that. Look at the chassis, look at the condition, everything about it. I didn't pay a lot for it. When I first saw it, and it's a wood body, which is nice, it's carved wood, I saw it and I just said, well, you know, I'll put what was it, $25 or $35 bid on it. And of course, everyone else was more sane than me, and no one else bid on it. And at the last few minutes, I'm saying, I don't want this, but no one bid against me, so I ended up with it. So here it is, and of course I keep it prominently in the cabinet as a reminder to control my urges. To show better taste. Well, we have all kind of interesting things here. One of the finest Italian companies is Unicar. There's a beautiful Ferrari. Look at that chassis. Just a thing of art. You know, that shouldn't even be raced, though they raced fantastic. They were great racers. They made thingies as well. This is their thingy.
Look at that.
Look at that, yeah, exactly. Just amazing. And then you have another company, Italian, called Mini Dream. And that's a Mini Dream, about 1/24 scale. Look at that chassis. They were trying to make that chassis really light. But you know, I don't think they still went fast enough because there's no cracks in the body. So, then we have a more unusual German company called White Point. They made vacuum form bodies in 1/32 scale. They've been out of business for years, but look at that beautiful Volvo 550. Nice chassis. They made some beautiful cars, but they're hard to find, very hard to find. Then we have a new company on the block called the Slot Affair out of Spain. And they make like 10 different versions of this outfit, which is a copy of the Scalextric, but the driver's different. And this is a clear one. Always get the clear one because there's always less of them. And I've only seen one other clear one for sale on eBay anywhere. So maybe I did the right thing here.
I think so.
Pretty rare. Did they ever make slot cars in Houston? Yes, they did. A good friend of mine, Robert, made slot cars in Houston. And HO collectors will know the company, New Aurora. And I remember when he was having these made in China, the first company cheated. And he would have the cars made, and the extra parts like the license plates and stuff, he would put on himself by hand because he was a perfectionist. And he lives in Florida now. But this is one of his early cars, this 1969 Camaro. And we have several of his cars here. Oh, Gigi, what a name! They made toys in France. Now, it may not look like it, but that is a Ferrari sharp nose. Sort of stubby and very toy-like. How about international? There's an international dragster. Isn't that a thing of beauty, huh? Look at that motor.
Good old padlock.
Yeah, it'll burn up or win.
Yeah, you run them at 36 volts. They either make it to the end in a second or just blow up.
That's it.
That was it. Those are very popular now, trying to find those.
Here's a Segura. This is the only car they made. They're out of Spain. Beautiful car. Look at that chassis. Isn't that amazing?
Nice.
124 scale. So this plastic they use can become really brittle and break. This is the second one I've owned. And let me tell you, when the first one broke, I didn't think I'd be able to get another one. But I lucked out because I work. Actually, I don't luck out. I work really hard looking for things. So it's not luck. It's just hard work that gets it for you. Here's a GG. This is a little bit nicer. These were made in 1958. It was a beautiful 1/43 scale Simca. You see the chassis and how it ran. So they made some nice cars too. IMC. Well, everybody likes muscle cars. So here's an IMC. Look at that. These are going for pretty good money. And that's, IMC had two. Now the Revell chassis fits on it perfect. Most of them have the Revell chassis. And of the 5 I have, 3 have the original chassis. But they made 2 different chassis. Most people don't know that. They made the silver one. And then they made this one. Clear. Yeah, sort of a clear one. So they made 2 different chassis. And those are IMC. But one just went on eBay for quite a bit of money. Okay.
Oh, yes.
The Green Hornet. Where will he strike next? Easy, nice chassis.
And what was different was the difference between the color of the chassis and the color of the drop bar.
And that's original, not a
That's an
repo.
original.
Of course, we got to show you the Batmobile.
The Batmobile.
There's again, look at that beautiful chassis. Isn't
BZ.
that pretty? You know, they should have made the car where they didn't paint it so you could see how beautiful the chassis was. But that was the original knockoffs, everything. What else do we have? Here is some sets, some cars made in HO by Tempo. Who's Tempo, you say? Tempo are slot cars made in Yugoslavia. Yes, Yugoslavia made slot cars. So here is a nice XKE and HO scale. It's not really a copy of anything. It's similar to a Fowler, but it's not. It says Tempo on the chassis. A unique chassis. And they made one set, and they made 4 different cars in different colors.
Hopefully more people will be inspired to come by.
Okay, so here's some different sets. We haven't shown much sets. The museum has over 7,000 cars, and we have over 750 sets. This is a set. A set will have track and cars and sometimes a transformer and controllers, etc. So what do we have that's interesting? Well, here's one. You've probably never seen this before because this is the only one I have ever seen. This is from Argentina. Grand Prix, American Grand Prix. It says American Grand Prix, but that's a British car. That's a German car. Isn't that interesting? So, here's the set. Sort of, you know, battery powered. No transformer. But look at the cars. They're Chevys. But in Argentina, they would race them. They would really change the bodies and stuff. They did beautiful jobs. But look at this. Look how cheap the chassis is. And it's belt drive. And look at this. I'm
Rubber.
not going to break it. But look
Rubber.
at that. See, it's rubber. It just wraps around the chassis. That's how it's held in. No screws, nothing. But look how magnificent the cars are. Well, 1/32 scale. Fowler. These are German. Here's a 1/24 scale Fowler Porsche. Isn't that a beauty?
Drop arm and everything.
Yeah, look at that. Look at that chassis. Plastic and metal. And you can see in the metal and the plastic, everything is very precise, very German. And then of course they made 132nd. Here's an HO truck. Shell, that's Dutch. Oh wait, well the Germans conquered Holland in World War II, so anyway, they're probably wishing they could do that again. But there's their chassis and everything. Luckily for the Dutch, they didn't make slot cars, so the Germans probably won't reinvade Holland. Here's a 132nd scale, really beautiful Porsche. Look at that, isn't that nice? Look at that chassis. A thing of beauty. Mostly, when people collect Fowler, they collect the HO stuff, not the bigger stuff. Okay, we got all kinds of stuff in here. We got some normal stuff, we got some rare stuff. Here's a Cox Gurney Ford. Now that's not a fake Gurney Ford, that's the original Gurney Ford. There's your original beautiful chassis. I mean, look at that.
Very collectible chrome.
Beautiful, beautiful piece.
Very rare to find.
Yeah, we have other Cox in here as well, different scales, even HO Cox. Then this roll is all Yonezawa. And Yonezawa made mostly 1/43 scale. They also did some HO. And here's a Sylvia, Japanese car. Isn't that nice? Little metal pin drive, 3.5 volt motor. What's that light? Then what do we have? We have Hawk, which people are familiar with. It's an American company. They only made 2 cars, a Ferrari Lancia and the Chaparral, but an interesting Chaparral model. There's your chassis, a little brass chassis, a nice motor. Then we have Sanwall. Sanwall is a Japanese company. They started making cars in 1962. Boy, did they make some weird stuff. Look at that. That's a Mercedes Silver Arrow. That driver must be 7'4". Look at the chassis. One of the worst designed chassis ever made. First off, it mounts diagonal. Well, it has a pin under here. It has a pin here. Little screw, really cheaply made screw. Has a 3.5 volt TTK motor. Just horrible. I can't even imagine how these things ran, but rare as anything. And they have a certain charm. Not bad, very toy-like charm. Extremely rare. Here's a Mercedes that Sanwall made. The only one, I think, in existence. It's a smaller 1/43 scale. Look at those cheap contacts. Another 3.5 volt motor. Look at that driver. He's really cramped in there. But again, a very rare, super rare piece. And they made HO Corvette. As far as I know, this is the only Sanwall Corvette known to exist in the entire world. So all you HO collectors, when you talk about rare,
That's rare.
that's rare, right there. Doesn't matter what color it is, has nothing to do with it. You can never find one in any color. They may have only made this in this color, who knows? It was a very lucky find for me about 2 years ago. Then we have Lindbergh. And here is remember we looked at a box, a mint in the box Cobra. That's what it looks like assembled. There's a spare tire in the back. There's your aluminum chassis, your steering. Nice car. They just didn't sell very well because they came out late in the game. Here's a rare one. There's a 1/32 scale Ferrari Sharknose. There's its chassis. They're sort of similar to the VIP. When they came out in 1/32 scale, I think they sort of copied the chassis of the VIP. Okay, so everyone knows about Mark slot cars. We looked at them earlier, but Plastimarks. Who's that? That's Marks made in Mexico, and they're just like regular Marks cars, but they come in these brilliant, wonderful colors for children. Here's a Ferrari Testarossa. If you looked at it, you might say, what the hell? But it is a Testarossa. And there's the steering, made in Mexico. We have a bunch of them here. They made 1/30th scale and they made HO scale. And again, this looks just like a Marx. But look at that T-Bird. Marx never made that color. Brilliant color. Then we have, I guess we have to show the cops. Here's the ESO with the working wing. Here's the, I think one run and most of these broke.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, but they're really popular. There's a Lola T70. Oh no, that's a Ferrari. Yes. And then we have, I hate to show you all this. I don't know why these are even in my collection, but a Torma. These are Argentinian toy-like cars. And I just have them. I don't know. You know, I had a screw loose the day I bought these. That's a hot rod. Look at that thing. There's the chassis. Pretty plain. Look at that car. Who knows what it is? Well, it's out of Argentina, so who knows? There's a bunch of them here. Now we've got some really rare stuff here. We have a bunch of Dynabrutes. Those are the HO racing. Here's a real nice Dynabrute here. Look at that chassis, an angle winder and HO. Isn't that nice? We have a bunch of those. But what I'm going to show you next is really rare for the show. Cobra-mites. These are Cobra-mite dragsters. That's a Corvette. Look at that. Is that amazing? You don't see these every day. We've got 3 different ones. I'm going to show you the packaging. This is a Volkswagen dragster. Look at that. They just opened it up so that that could stick out. But try to find one. Yeah. You can't find one even with a box that's worse shaped than this. It's just rare.
Cute.
Very rare.
It's running off.
Yeah, it's running.
We have anything else interesting here? How about Spada? You ever heard of Spada? Probably not. Look at that Renault. They only made 2 cars. It's a French company. It's supposed to be around HO. It's a little bit bigger, but very, very rare. Let's see. Oh, Conti.
That's the...
This is Italian, 1948. Has this canvas, has a metal screen roof and a metal floor. It conducts electricity through the top and the bottom. This is all hand carved out of wood. The figures in the building are all handmade. And this is the car. Look at this. Die cast. Here's where it picks up its electricity.
At the top of the roof.
Mm-hmm.
Look at that chassis and motor. And when the car bumps into the rear of another one, you see how it affects the steering and the bumper? That way the cars could pass each other. Now some people say, there's only 2 of these sets, by the way, known to exist. The other one is for sale. It's $11,000 if you're interested. It's in Italy. So definitely, you know, you better rush if you want it at that price. It's a bargain.
Oh, really? 11,000?
$11,000. So they made the same car in about 5 different colors. This set is extremely rare, needless to say. But the, what was I going to say about it? It's very difficult for the canvas and all these different parts to have survived all these years. We don't think they made very many either, probably just a couple. But some people think it's a bumper car set, but it's not. And even though it looks like it here, a bumper car has an open field where cars can go in any direction and crash. These cars have a movable bumper, not so that they can crash, so they can go around each other. And you see there's an island here with 2 electric lights and a bench. That island stops the cars from going in every direction, instead keeps them in an oval race. So that's my theory, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah.
These are made by an artisan in England for me. These are Soviet cars from the 30s and 50s. Look at that hot rod. Is that cool? These are all handmade, one of a kind. 1/32nd scale. And take a look at this one. Look at that. Look at those pipes. Look at that stern Russian face. He's heading toward the Ukraine. He's got these to get there as quick as possible. Putin called him up and he's on his way. Well, war may be over by the time that car makes it. This was also made by him. This is a French car from 1904. It has the mechanic and the driver. Everything is handmade. And I saw this car and I bought it on eBay. I thought it was so beautiful, and I had him make these other cars because nobody in the world is ever going to produce these as slot cars. Look at that Russian car. You will look how weird it is. It's great. Here's a 1936 aerodynamic car. Look at that. We had the Chrysler Airflow. The Soviets had this Moscovich. Look at that. I think the Airflow probably looks better, but nevertheless. Then we have the Bandai, which is this shell. The Bandai made 1/32nd, 1/36, and HO. And their rarest car is this. I have 2 of these. I've never seen another one. It's a Volkswagen Bug. Look at that rear end of the Volkswagen. Look how big it is. It's really a really badly made model. There's your chassis, can motor, there's your contacts that go in and out. And that is a Bandai Volkswagen. I have the only 2 that I know that exist. They made other interesting cars. Look, here's a Toyota 800. No one else makes that. Actually, in Japan, there is one other company that makes it. And they made a lot of weird things. Here's a nice Triumph. Look at that Triumph. No one ever made this as a slot car. It's really nice. Or, if you want, here's look at the Honda. Look at that. No one ever made that as a slot car. Only Bandai. So if you're interested in odd cars, and here we have, here's a Cadillac by Bandai and HO. Isn't that a beauty? Gold chrome. Isn't that nice? Same kind of pickups as the bigger cars. Or you could get a car in the box, like this. Look at that, isn't that nice? HO. And then we have GGF. Well, GGF was sort of a conglomerate. They made cars for French stuff, German stuff. They made a series of 4 different cars that were 1/24 scale. That are sort of interesting. Sort of Hong Kong quality, maybe a little bit better. Pretty fragile, I would think. But unusual cars. And we have a set. And they made smaller cars, 1/43 scale. Oh, and here is unique. This is a Jaguar D in 1/24 scale. This is the first production slot car kit made in the world. You can see here, look at that chassis. Is that something? How crude and how early it is. And then it came in a box like this. I can tell you this, they weren't into marketing much. Look, it's hand done, handwritten. There's a nice picture there. Anyway, you don't see it very often. Occasionally they show up. I don't think there's anything else here that's interesting. I mean, there's some other stuff. What do you think? Which we information.
Wow, I think
We still have a lot if we want.
there's so
We
much
made you-
stuff.
Yeah.
There's so much stuff you have to stop by and you have to see it for yourself. You could spend days here looking at every single one of those and just trying to imagine being a kid, you know, growing up in the 50s, 60s, 70s, you know, owning or finding these, and then who knows whatever happened to the one that you have. At least you know that it's here. One that Bernard has here at Bernard's Slot Car Museum in Houston, Texas. So call him up, you know, let him know that you're going to be, and he's very, very nice. Buy him lunch, you know, break up the wallet, you know, and
I don't have expensive taste.
Chinese is preferred, and you know, have fun and look at stuff and bring back some memories for yourself, you know, of like myself, for the Strombecker and for the classic cars and the BZs and all that we used to race as a kid, and we still do now as a 70-year-old, you know. So hey, it's all fun. So please come back and let Bernard know that you want to come. You won't want to miss it.
And be sure to wear your glasses. Don't forget them so you
That's
can
true.
see the detail.
You got that right.